Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to Talk Together. No, you haven't stumbled across a hot tub stream by mistake. I may be dressed for the beach, but that's because with guests like this, life is a beach. And thank you for joining us on this particular one for an evening of talking about Dungeons and or Dragons. I am, as I have said many times before, still, it is true, David Shears, and I am once again your host tonight. I will be chatting to the wonderful Ed, whom you can see here. And Ed, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself for those who may not be familiar with your streaming prowess?
Yes, that's a hell of an introduction. I'm an actor, a keen D&D player, as I think is, well, I don't know if anyone else has done this before, but I bet some people have. I played it long before it all became popular, if you see what I mean. I was playing it when I was 10 years old, which is a very, very long time ago now. But it was the thing that back then, even discussing D&D was kind of oh, really? And people would want to not talk to you. Now it's an opening line in a bar.
Oh, yeah.
I play D&D. Oh, really? You know, that's a sea change I never thought I'd see. That was just, I don't know how that happened.
Just chatting to somebody about it, and then they whip out their dice and their dice tray. You're like, yeah, I see.
Yeah, no, you're right there, exactly. And that just feels really weird to me.
Absolutely. Well, it is a great change, I think, that it is now something that we can all talk about as a hobby, a culture, and in many ways, myself included, something of an obsession. So, for the rest of the evening, we will be going through some enticing questions and some adventurous anecdotes. The more enticing and adventurous, the better. What questions, you ask? Well, once again, despite the last slightly rambling but very enjoyable episode of Talk Together, the dice will hopefully decide. So have your emojis ready, chat. Before we kick off, this stream will run for about an hour. We are delighted to be sponsored by Hero Forge, Ultra Pro, and Elderwood Academy, and supported by D&D Beyond, Warriors of Waterdeep, and Level Up Dice. We are Roll Together RPG on all social media, and a massive thank you once again to our D20 Club on Patreon. Please do check it out. Our shows are available as podcasts. Just search Roll Together RPG on your favorite podcasting app. So, without further ado, is it time to roll that dice? I believe it is.
It's like being in the Crystal Maze. It's great.
Oh yeah, this is totally my reel for being a game show host in the future. As soon as there's a game show around Dungeons and Dragons, that I'm all over that. I'm all over that.
Coming, exactly.
So we have in fact rolled a 5 on the dice. I don't think I've ever actually asked this question before, so this will be a first. And the question I ask you, Ed, is this: how do you feel about cosplay?
Ooh, right. Well, it's really difficult because as an actor, it feels like when you do cosplay or role playing or anything like that, it's like when people ask you to do charades at Christmas and you're an actor. People are always like, "Oh, you must love this." It's like, why would I like working at Christmas? And not only that, but I'm going to be expected to be really, really good. So surely I'm going to win this entire round of charades because I'm an actor. And it's kind of, I mean, the thing is with cosplay, when it goes into like LARPing and stuff like that, I think it's fascinating. I think I much prefer doing it like in my imagination, if you see what I mean, specifically because unless you really get the production values way, way, way up high, I don't think there'll always be that little person in the back of your head going, "This isn't really real though, is it?" Do you know what I mean? Which ruins the whole effect.
A suspension of disbelief.
Right.
Draw two parallels there. The first is it's a little bit like asking a stand-up comedian to tell you a joke.
Right.
Be like, go on, be funny then.
Yeah, and dance, monkey, dance. Like that's not. Yeah.
Yeah. And the second is it sounds a little bit like seeing a film of a book, where it can be done exceptionally well, but unless that production value is there, it will never compete to what can be done in the imagination in terms of how things can be visualized.
Completely. And not only that, but because I view the Lord of the Rings films as Oscar-winning examples of how to do it.
Absolutely.
But there's still a lot of issues I have with them. very specifically in the first one, that moment when Aragorn goes, "Let's hunt some orc." It's like, that just shattered my suspension of disbelief for like the entire rest of the film.
That smacks of red line being written in by a producer in this.
Right, totally. It's just like, and that thing when the orc says, flesh is back on the menu, boys. It's like, that implies they have restaurants. I don't think that is a, I don't think that's a possibility. That's not my job.
Table for 4 at Sauron's, please.
Exactly. It's just not a case that you would have a menu. Who's going to be the maitre d'? It's just not going to happen. Also, orc wine, that's going to just taste like treacle, I reckon. Anyway, I think that if you, if you're going to make one, then you either have to, if you're going to make a thing about a book that's that big, like if it's 1984 or something, either you've got to throw 200 million at it now, or it's not really going to work. And it's not really going to work then, but because you spend so much money, people are at least going to go, it's quite impressive. But you're never going to get the same thing as the book can.
Like at the very least, if it's got that much of a budget, you'll be able to look at it and say the visuals are excellent. Like certain sci-fi film that was contentious that came out a number of years ago, but relatively recently. Well, I watched it and thought, the visuals. It's an excellent feature-length advertisement for special effects.
Exactly.
Really good. I mean, who needs character? Who needs plot? I'm not going to say what film it is because, frankly, I don't want my Twitter feed blowing up. I'm sure those that feel similarly can guess.
Yes, I think I can. Exactly. But let's leave it. Let's just leave it hanging. Let's leave it there.
That seems like a really good opportunity to roll that dice.
I think it's a good plan.
So, as it makes its way across the screen, what will it be? It will be a 19.
Ooh.
And a 19, I'm curious about this, knowing you as I do.
Okay.
If you could go back and change an in-game decision, what would it be?
Oh, wow.
We don't pull punches here, Ed.
No. That's
not on Talk Together.
Well, that's a really big one. But okay. So there's because there's 2 games where I have dived in deeper than I have at any other time. The one was with the doyen of Roll Together, Chris Hislop, DMing, where my first character got killed by committing suicide in a really beautiful way. Like, actually got the several people in the room to tears. Admittedly, everyone wasn't entirely sober, and it was about 4 o'clock in the morning. But at the same time, it felt like I'd made an impression. And so then Chris comes to me and says, how would you like to play a gelatinous cube? And I went, well, that's patently ridiculous, but all right, why not? And the way that it got set up, because you remember this thing, you were part of that?
I was. Was this Frontier?
No. I was going to come on to Frontier, because then that's the next one.
Yeah. I don't think I was. I didn't witness this. This is new to me.
Oh, man. It was so... fun's the wrong word. It was like the most wonderful challenge. And somebody paid me one of the best compliments I've ever been given, which was, God, Ed, playing with you in this character is like having a philosophy exam every single session, which was a really, really interesting take on it. Because basically my thing was that when this character appeared, he'd been given consciousness, but absolutely no training, if you see what I mean. Like, no life experience. He just knows that he's been somewhere, could have been there for forever, but that he now wants to go off and move. And he bumped into a different character who just happened to be a lawful good monk.
Ah.
And I was like, this is perfect. But the decision that he made was that he tried to, I can't remember what he did, but he healed me. And because he healed me and I felt better, my character was like, right, I'm going to trust this. I'm going to trust this being. And then he, as it were, taught me everything. But it was the thing of, because he taught me how to be a lawful good character, then my character arc becoming something more rounded. Do you see what I mean? Not just being, it was like being brought up a sort of really intensely religious background, but then discovering that there's more to life than this. And one of my favorite,
Cube do.
Right, exactly. And one of my favorite bits of doing that was when we got up, because he'd only ever been in the Underdark. So going up onto nearly at the surface, he just sat in the corridor of this thing where the wind was howling past, and it's like it was like he was on a constant what are they called? Not joyride, roller coaster.
Yeah.
The first time, he's just going, oh, wow, this is amazing, and so you couldn't get anything out of it for basically most of the session. Oh, this is so cool.
Where's the ceiling?
Yeah, exactly. How do I get off? All of that kind of stuff. But I was going to try and think of a decision from that, but actually, I'm pretty happy with all the decisions I made there. On the other hand, Frontier, which is what you were part of, was when my character was supposed to be the epitome of good. It was the first time I'd ever played a good character, and I feel like when he. The thing is, because it kind of worked. Basically, we had an epitome of good, an epitome of evil, an epitome of neutral. And the idea was that all of those three characters would, as it were, like collect as many people to their to good, evil, or neutral. And then at the end of the campaign, however long that took, whichever total was the highest, as it were, won.
Yeah. Oh.
It quickly got abandoned because it was ridiculous and felt quite manipulative, to be honest, because like trying to get people, come over to my, my, what's it called? Alignment. That felt weird.
Partially why I sculpted a character that didn't necessarily need to be as engaged with exactly, like lived very much in the present moment to moment. So the whole plot was kind of ancillary to his point.
Your character was amazing. The thing is, I think possibly it was the most weird experience I've ever had playing D&D was actually entirely due to, I can't remember whether it was you or your character, but my character had just managed to come back from the dead. Yeah. My character just managed to come back from the dead as a completely different being. I think I'd turned from a human to a drow or something like that.
Yeah.
And my beloved had turned from an elf into a lizard folk, I think.
Yeah.
And I was trying to deal with all of this, but then for some reason she died. And so I was just sort of in agony. And then your character, I can't remember, what was it you said? It will move your body.
Yes. Right? And you were paralyzed at the time. Yes, because my character with an intelligence of 6, I remember this now, had you'd been paralyzed by some sort of drow poison or similar.
Yes.
And I'd awakened my snake at this point. And I feel I should clarify that statement. I had used the spell Awaken on a creature that was a giant snake. Why do I fear that's going to be clipped and played back for eternity? And the snake functioned essentially, I touched on this before, as my intelligence and my conscience.
Yes.
So I came across your character paralyzed and was like, what do you do? What was Baisha's voice like? Should we
that's right.
eat him? Or what? And the snake with the lovely rational voice of Chris Hislop, to whom this impression will do no justice, but something along the lines of, no, we shouldn't eat him. We should free him. So I cast some spell, a dispel magic or something on you,
which didn't work.
Yeah, and having previously said, like, in order to not kill you, you must be local. If you're local, move your body.
And it just spread like wildfire throughout the entire group. Yeah. And soon everyone was gyrating. It was like some kind of mania. It was amazing. And the thing is, I was sitting there, and because I was so deeply into this character, and I was so like, what the hell do I do? I was just sitting there going, God, this is horrible. This is horrible. Whilst everyone around me was wetting themselves laughing. I will say my defense.
Hilarious. I will say my defense. I was playing that perfectly straight.
Absolutely. And I salute you as an actor for it. It was more the thing that I feel like it was one of the funniest things that had ever happened, apparently.
I have to tie this in with the previous question slightly because I'm not. This isn't a gotcha. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. This isn't Channel 4 News. But I remember you said that the reason you didn't like doing charades and so forth was because as an actor you felt there was almost an expectation upon you to be quote unquote an actor.
Yeah,
and yet, as far as I'm aware, you've never had an issue playing Dungeons and Dragons with people who aren't quote unquote actors.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. Now that's a really interesting question because that's the thing. I think it's it seems an obvious statement that actors are good for playing D&D because they'll get more into it, they'll understand it more, and whether or not that's true, that is a statement that one could make, if you see what I mean.
It's a hypothesis, though.
Right, but the thing is that I think if you overpopulate with actors, and I've seen this, everyone just starts talking over each other.
Yeah.
A little bit.
No, it can happen. Sometimes.
Obviously been guilty of it myself, and it's one of the things that happens. But therefore, if the group is leavened up, particularly by somebody who does not take actors bullshit, which is an important thing, and also people who need to be drawn out.
Yeah, because
there's nothing an actor loves more actually than going like, take the stage, if you see what I mean. If they think that someone's got something going. Because if they're a good actor, they'll go like, you can do this, let's do this, let's dance, basically. And so having that kind of interaction, because basically in charades, everyone's sitting around judging you. In D&D, it's a good game, nobody judges you.
That's true.
That's what it should be.
No, I see. I definitely see that point. Charades feels a little bit more, now that you've put it into context, like an audition.
Right. What the hell would you want to do an audition in the middle of Christmas?
Whereas D&D is much more like I almost said a pro-am improv, but no, nobody's given status in D&D. Everybody has high status.
Exactly.
It's an interactive improv storytelling experience. And yes, gosh, you're right. I just remembered having a game which was almost entirely populated by actors, and I probably wanted to murder everyone, including myself, by the end of it.
Right. There's nothing, but also there's nothing you can do. And also, if you are, again, if you're a good actor, if you then picked a character who's quiet, then you'll be quiet.
Yeah. True.
Like that's a very reasonable thing, and that's the thing. If you've got a bunch of actors and one of them's decided to pick a bard, because somebody always does, then you just get the thing of them going, right, I'm going to take control of this whole proceeding, and it's like, please. Okay, no, let's see what we're doing.
I tell you, that was the most pleasant surprise that I've ever had, and it wouldn't have been a problem if someone had done it. But when we did Emma's game earlier this year, Windfall in Waterdeep, and that was all based around the theatre and so on. So my expectation was, I bet everybody wants to be a bard, so I won't be a bard. But it turned out that pretty much everyone had a similar thought process, so we all ended up being backstage crew. And I was like, this shows that I'm probably in a group with no dangerous ego, unless it's me. It's usually me.
If you can't spot the pigeon, it's usually you. They're like, yeah, no, I've got that.
And I absolutely agree. When there's that full, everybody is serving the story rather than their own spotlight. It just makes for such a much more enjoyable experience, both to be part of, and if you're sitting there as a character who isn't currently in the scene, or indeed watching on stream, it's much more enjoyable to watch because you see this action sort of developing, which is great.
Well, just a slight tangent, but do you know the? No, just a tangent. There is the different ways that acting training is treated in the different hemispheres. But like the Western idea is that you go along, you get taught the toolbox, and then you jump in and you learn on the job, as it were. But there's a thing that they do in Russia where you train for like 7 years or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it's the thing of like it's kind of your career. Your career is your training is career, but you see what I mean. Yeah. And apparently it's a completely different experience watching something, because so this group of actors are got together and they're put in to be like a training group, and what they will do is like a Shakespeare, a Chekhov, and then something original, and do those three plays on repeat for like years. And so therefore when you go and see them, the exactness of their performance is something completely otherworldly, because they've done it so many damn times. They know it so well that I think we as we don't really have like tours that go on that long anymore. People would just say they would go mad.
The closest thing we had to it was probably Rep. I guess the longest I've known someone be in a play for now is probably 6 months,
right?
Because they do run, like, you know, the Mousetrap is the most obvious example. But I can't. To me, and it's not a criticism, but to me, what you've conjured up there is almost like a military cohort, like this idea of drilling to the point where you have perfection, but then at that point, is it art? But this feels like a debate that could go on.
Oh yeah, we could do an hour on this.
Yeah,
and
I feel like it might be somewhat exclusionary to those
people who don't dress up for a living. Yeah,
perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps chat is now full of people saying no. We want to hear the debate over the minutiae of cultural exchanges in the arts. In which case, look, we'll come back and do it.
Absolutely, make a whole new podcast where we just bitch about that stuff. I'm sure that'd be really popular.
But leaping to the dangerous assumption, perhaps, that most people may want to hear us talk about Dungeons and Dragons and things
Let's
thereon.
go with that. Yeah.
Let's, once again, grammatically or not, we love the emoji, roll that dice. And what's it going to be? It's going to be, ooh. Okay, it's an 18.
Low and then very high twice.
Yeah. I've gone from George to Rebecca. So the 18 question is, what or whom is the best villain you've ever faced in a game?
That's a really good question.
My own entropy.
So I didn't actually face this one, but I think it was a really good one. I have a cousin, a wonderful cousin, who is basically he's a fantastic human being, but just quite difficult to deal with. Imagine Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory, but 18 stone.
Sure.
That kind of stuff. He's a lovely human, but yeah. And but he was always the dungeon master when I was playing Dungeons and Dragons when I was younger. But he said that in a different game, he had put this thing. These guys were doing a run through a castle, and they open up a door, and they just find like a pool of light, and a man sitting there, in a sort of position, if you see what I mean, with his eyes shut, with his legs crossed, an old man with a wispy beard, and he just looks up and goes, "Don't fuck with the old man." And you've never seen a party move so fast to just get the hell out of there. And the guy was like a level 5 illusionist. Like there was never going to be a problem. But he said he's never seen a party move so fast because you do not screw with the old man.
That's fantastic. I'm getting strong Terry Pratchett vibes from that.
Totally.
It's very Lucy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't forget rule number 1.
Yes, exactly. Well, this is the thing. I definitely think that in the same way that every single political thought in my head was basically put there by a Yes Minister, I think that just about every philosophical thought I have in my head was pretty much put there by Terry Pratchett, which is not a bad way to be. And I'd say it's pretty open-minded. So I'm pleased with that.
If I ever do my PhD, it will be on the philosophy of Pratchett, I think.
Yes, which I think is now, and
comes to the fore.
Absolutely, it's a really, really interesting thing. Anyway, sorry. Yes, the best villain. Again, it must be a Chris Hislop one. They are extremely good at conjuring up terrifying visions.
Oh yes.
Well, I think in one of our roll-togethers, actually, the framed. What's it called? It was something framed.
Was it? Wasn't Baldur's Gate? Was it?
Baldur's Gate framed.
It was Baldur's Gate framed. Yeah.
No, that's because I couldn't remember. I was trying to say Waterdeep. I'm like, no, that wasn't the city. Anyway, yeah. So
confusing it with my own Baldur's Gate experience. It can't all be in Baldur's Gate, but no, this one was.
This one was. Yeah. But basically, it was when I was playing a bard, and it was specifically that I wanted to create a character who was fragile. If you see what I mean. So I made him a castrati, which I thought, because I did some research on them, and the thing is, they had this. How do you put it? Basically, especially considering what had happened to them, a lot of the times they were very, very good in bed, or at least had very good reputations of being good in bed, and which I believe is simply because they were better equipped to, they didn't have the equipment, but that meant that they had to use all their other faculties, which was a lovely idea.
It encourages generosity.
This is exactly what I mean.
Say.
Exactly. And the thing is that then just being intimate with a woman didn't mean that you had to. Anyway, let's move on from that topic. But it was the thing that also. Because this character was fragile, they had like 12 hit points. They were really like not quite pathetic, but it was a lot of fun playing them. But the thing is, then Chris came up with this bad person. I don't know whether they were. Anyway, it was a figure who was 9 feet tall, all dressed in black with a skull instead of a face and a fiery crown and all of this kind of stuff. And it was scarier than any other bad person, because what it meant was that, like, usually when a bad guy comes along, if it's a dragon or something like that, you've got probably 4 or 5 other people, at least one of whom is going to be a tank. We didn't have a tank in our party. And therefore this 9-foot thing is like, I don't want to stab it. And it was just sort of very, the first impulse was to run, not to fight. And that's quite a rare thing in Dungeons and Dragons, because usually the idea is that as adventurers, you'll face anything. But here we were playing a group who's like, actually, probably the best thing to do is run away. Which was weird. Well, exactly. The discretion, the better part of valor, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. There are brave adventurers, there are old adventurers. There are no brave old adventurers.
Precisely. That feels like a Pratchettism in itself. That was very good.
I've stolen that from somewhere. I can't think of where, but it's definitely not my own epithet.
Oh, it's awesome. What's it called? What's that thing? Art is theft. That's what we got told at the beginning of a rehearsal process.
Yes. Like, bad artists copy, good artists steal.
Exactly. Exactly. And reinterpret.
Absolutely. Yeah. The theft of translation. Fantastic. Well, that's a pretty intimidating villain to have faced, especially with a vulnerable character. It's very much against the archetype of D&D, as you say, which is always interesting to explore and kind of push against the archetype of what it's supposed to be and make it your own story. And I've always found that, many people though have had the privilege of being DM'd by, but Chris was my first experience, very good at leaning into whatever the story is that the party wants to tell, and then structuring it in various horrible and torturous ways, but in the best possible sense, to bring out the most of the characters that you put the effort into creating.
Yeah, because the thing is, they always provide like a mincing machine, but because they adhere to the rule of cool, which means that not that you can get away with anything, but if you come up with something that's really cool, then it'll happen. And that just makes everything better, because it means you can destroy a mincing machine by headbutting it. It's great.
This is true. That was a very interesting visual that I just had there.
Mincing.
It's a teaser for the upcoming campaign, Winter in the Abattoir.
It's an amazing idea.
Yeah, if only I had the time, inclination, or capacity to write it.
Yeah, definitely not me either.
On that slightly ancillary note, let us once again roll that dice in a vacuum of time and space. That is, as it makes its way across the screen, a 15. And this is always a fun question. I'm glad this has come up, because I'm curious. So the question is, where do you start when making a character?
I could definitely do an hour on this. I'll try and keep it brief. I have well, the thing for me is it's all about the name. And I think that there's some very coming up with one yourself is really difficult. And one of those name generator things is always really bland. I find, like, because I follow American football, which I believe you do too.
I do indeed, yes.
In fact, our teams, I think, are from rival divisions, rivals in a division, which is extremely annoying.
I like to say that I played in college, were it not for the fact that the college I played in was in the UK.
Yeah,
so
me too.
It's not quite as
august. No,
quite so. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. No, I got put in as linebacker, and then realised that these were all bitter people who didn't make the grade in rugby, and therefore I was like, no, I'm done with this. I love the game, but this is not the way it should be played. But yes, the thing is that particularly American football players have some of the most amazing names.
Oh yeah.
There's a lineman. Oh, he didn't play for your team. I think he played for the Jets, but he was called DeBrickashaw Ferguson. And I just thought that's brilliant. But they do have ones occasionally that sound like they should be D&D characters. And whenever I find one of those, I note it down, because I think I would like to play that character. If you see what I mean. You see
that? You just prompted something in me. There was a receiver that played for the Giants, obviously my team. Sorry if that's offended anyone in chat. When I first started getting into the game, and he was known as well-dressed Armani Toomer. And that's
wow.
What a character that is.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
waiting. You've given me something here. I appreciate that. Please do continue, though. I was so rudely interrupted.
No. Understood. Well, this is the thing. The one of the things that somebody noticed, because I had a thing where a group of, we weren't playing, but we were sitting around discussing D&D a bit, and one of the things that came up is, what are your characters always? As in, obviously you play a lot of different characters, a lot of different things, but there's always a through line. And it's an interesting sort of, not psychiatric, but kind of philosophical question about what is it that draws you to these characters. And people tend to go sort of, well, mine are always kick-ass or stuff like that. And I realized mine are always orphans. And I thought, that's a shame. Because like I have a very existent mother and father, and I love them dearly. It's not as if there's anything I would say to work out there. Other people have expressed other opinions on this, but this is what I mean. I think that the joy of D&D, and indeed of acting for me, was that you get to be a murderer, a villain, and not, as it were, get away with it, but it means you can take your brain there and come back again and hopefully be all right. This is why I'm not particularly big on method, because I'm like, I don't want to go to the I don't want to method to the places the characters that I want to play are going to go to. That would be dangerous. Yeah. Do you see what I mean?
No, absolutely. I mean, there's a reason why my former drama school that I initially went to was known as the Trauma Center, because very much method. And I agree. Like, it's good to have. It's good to build the bus, but at the end of the day, you're always the one driving it, right?
Exactly.
And people do still get immense. You know, I'm very much. I would say guilty of this, but I'm not ashamed of it. But I'm very much capable of this, getting very emotionally involved in a particular character moment. But I absolutely agree with you. I think it's possible to do that in a way that is healthy and cathartic, rather than in a way that is inherently damaging. Right. That's always the goal. But I absolutely, I agree with you on that point. I think being able to almost play with these aspects of one's psyche and psychology is a tremendously healthy thing to do, and D&D is one of the best ways that I have discovered, and it sounds like you as well, to sort of do that.
Very much.
So I'm curious then, because in the recent campaign that you're playing in at the moment, you didn't have the opportunity to choose the name. And,
yes, that was a really difficult one. That was interesting. So because there was already a character there, it didn't feel any more difficult to inhabit, because the thing was, I went through the character with Chris to try and figure out if there was anything there that I could, as it were, latch onto. Yeah. But it didn't end up being that. It ended up much more being, oh, actually, this is a character that I've always wanted to play, but because my tendency is to go towards damage dealing characters rather than healers. This one suddenly felt like, oh, actually, this would be it would be a challenge to make this person interesting. And that's what I wanted to do, because, you know, they're an old fusty fuddy-duddy who is supposed to be in charge. That's no fun at all. You know, that's got no spice to it. That's got no, like, the person has to be there and he has to be the one who sorts everything out. This is an acting thing as well. I would prefer not to be the leading man, because to my mind, if you're the leading man, it means you have to be a kind of blank slate, because people need to be able to project on you whatever they want you to be.
I agree.
Whereas a villain always has their own full backstory, because otherwise no one's ever going to believe that they're a villain. You can't have a blank-faced villain. That doesn't work. And that's the thing. So for this one, I was like, right, he is, as it were, the leading man, but I'm going to play him as a character actor. That was the intention anyway. I don't know if it's quite worked out like that. We'll see.
Oh, I think judging by how it's been received and judging by the comments in chat, that your performance has proved immensely popular. I know that if you're anything like every other actor I know, it's very difficult to hear praise, but nonetheless.
Yeah, that burns. It's kind of, you know, it's a wonderful sort of acid peel. It's sort of like, oh, I'm sure this is good for me, but oh, damn it. Oh, yeah. I share your predilections when it comes towards how, if I gave into my worst instincts, I would probably just, every character I created would be called Captain Awesome Fist and would just do the most damage. Absolutely.
Yes. Yes, damage. But much like yourself, I discovered that there's ways of influencing a story and ways of having these powerful moments that are not necessarily involving being in the front lines of combat. And I honestly, I've really enjoyed watching your performances thus far, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the rest of the campaign plays out, because my own experience of you as a player has been in home games. So finding you as a paralyzed, transformed drow, and obviously we touched a little bit on with Chris and I the sort of, I mean, I don't want to say almighty brofest, but the Super Bowl party of D&D games was, I believe, how we ended up defining it of Eventide.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, and actually, come to think of it, I've slightly proved myself wrong there, because I am playing a cleric in that as well.
That,
though, is definitely not the leading character in that. Oh man, she has been through some serious stuff.
That's been a transformative campaign for all concerned. I think
that was. But the thing was, like, I created her as a character who could basically stand anything. Yeah, and then Chris, because they're really good at what they do, just put her through everything. It's been amazing. Yeah.
To just put it into a tiny bit of context for chat, Ed's character in our home game is I believe half orc midwife cleric of a good god. Yes. And is forced to contend with a rather rambunctious bunch. Is probably the best way of putting it.
Yes, that's exactly
it. It's an opportunity to express and experience different aspects in different games. That's what I love, is playing with a whole new group of players and almost sinking into the rhythm of the campaign and just finding that way to mix that's fun as part of the whole.
Well, and that's because, yes, like you say, a brofest of the worst kind in some ways. But it hasn't. There isn't a sense of it ever descending into any kind of brofest. It is literally that we're all just acting as our characters would. The fact that I am playing the girl in the party, if you see what I mean, doesn't seem to sort of, register's the wrong word, but doesn't seem to it doesn't require anything. Yeah, if you see what I mean. It's much more about the experience of the character rather than the.
That's it. I actually absolutely agree with you there, because it's character driven,
right? Exactly.
And it's the immutable characteristics are not part of the character, and Chris is very good at creating a world in which that is the case. So you're free to, I think one is free to allow the personality of the character to drive the story. Exactly. And it's very, very rare. We might be accosted by a guard, but it's not because they say like, "Oi, you orc, what are you doing?" Yeah. It's more like, "Oi, you resemble that person. What did that crime?"
Yes. Well, and the thing is, but the only thing with that is that we inevitably have done that crime. That's why it's the problem.
I'd love to say it was a case of misinformation and circumstance, but it almost certainly wasn't.
Almost certainly wasn't. Whatever it is that they're accusing somebody of, it was probably us.
But before we move on to roll the dice once more, yes. I've outed myself, so for the avoidance of doubt, which team do you support?
Oh, that's mean. Okay, there is a team which have just recently changed their name to from a slur, a racial slur, I'm embarrassed to say. The thing is, I've been supporting them for 25 years, and the reason why I started supporting them was because they had a name which was a racial slur, which I didn't realize, against Native Americans. And I thought Native Americans were really, really cool, and this is why I started supporting the team. 25 years later, I have seen all facets of how bad sport can be, unfortunately, with that particular team. It's known as the Washington football team. They are, I don't know how you put it, a chore to support, but some maybe worth it in the end, I think.
Yes, there's a reason why the division in which both our respective teams play is known as the NFC Least.
But it should be the East, it's the Least. They're just awful.
Sometimes it's a joy to suffer artistically.
It feels like that. It feels like it's a sort of thing of for Americans it's all about success. For English it's sort of woe is me, and that's kind of what you enjoy in supporting a football team. Being able to complain about it.
Absolutely. I'd like to disagree. but I can't.
Exactly.
So, lassoing at that particular tangent once more and dragging us back into the realm of dice, Dungeons and Dragons thereof. Yes. We roll that dice once more and... Oh, this is 13. So this is a somewhat esoteric, somewhat abstract question.
Cool.
What do dice mean to you?
Oh. Okay, this is quite interesting. Do you know of the Dice Man?
I do not know of the Dice Man.
I think I might have tried to tell you this to you before, but it was probably 3 years ago whilst we were standing by Chris's hot tub. Basically, there was a book written in the 60s by somebody called Luke Reinhardt. I don't think that was his real name, which espoused what I consider to be the last actually genuinely different philosophical idea of the 20th century, which was basically that our entire lives are governed by chance, to a greater or lesser extent, but to be honest, a greater extent. And why not then live your life by chance? So what he would do, as it were, he didn't do this. The book goes into a lot of detail about what he did. It's amazing. But he would wake up in the morning and go, right, I am going to, say you've just got a D6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1, have a shower, shave, all that kind of stuff. 2, jump out the window. 3, you decide on options, and then you roll the dice, and whichever one comes up, you have to do that. It's kind of like, it's as if this mechanic we've got for this interview, you just scale it up to your whole life.
Yeah.
And you always have a dice with you to be able to make any decision.
I can see the appeal of that. Because it absolves oneself of responsibility. I think this is the most philosophical response I've ever had to this question, by the way.
Thank you.
But I suppose, like, without getting into it too much, because again, I worry about going down quite a narrow tangent.
Yes, but niche.
I sort of think that even taking chance into the equation, like the probable, it still has to be possible. Right?
Yes.
Because otherwise, say you roll a d20 and it comes up with 17 and it says strike a match on jelly.
Well, you could try.
You could try.
It's also up to you whether you stop.
Oh, okay. So it's not. Hang on. Sorry. You're not like a golem that's just destined to toil forever.
I will do this for the rest of time. No. The idea is that any decision that you have to make, because there's also, as it were, layers to it, because you can start off by going, what am I going to do today?
Okay.
But then you can also do to the thing of like, I need to go to the loo. Shall I go to the loo or not? And the thing is, if you keep rolling no, but the thing is also the reason why it's a feedback thing is that you are picking all the decisions.
Yeah.
So you're not doing anything nominally that you don't want to do unless unless that's what you want to do, if you see what I mean.
No, I do. I think you could distill it down to, say you're like, oh, I've got to decide X or Y. I'll toss a coin, and then you're like, well, I'm going to make it 2 out of 3. Then it's clear what your initial impetus was in the first place.
And it's easier to reveal that if, as you say, you don't have, because I have this thing that everybody has, like an enormous wedding train behind them of decisions that they've previously made, which they feel like they've got to adhere to. I am the kind of person who has made that decision, so that will inform future decisions. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And when people talk about like having a fresh start, just being able to be a new person, it means that they've forgotten all of those and they can just start making decisions again rather than having to think back through the kind of person that they are.
So it's a constant rebooting,
right? If you want to, if you can.
Yeah, interesting. I can see a lot of ways that could be applied in an enjoyable sense.
Right. The thing, just to finish it, the thing is that I was in a play which was based on the Dice Man. It was so bad. It was really annoying. It was like a very, very basic sort of sitcom, and it was incredibly predictable. And I'm like, you're writing about somebody being random, and you're not even. Anyway, I did it, and my parents came to see it. And they took me out for dinner afterwards because they're lovely. And they were talking about it, and they went, the thing is, nobody could live like that. Yeah. Like, no, this guy absolutely did in the 60s. That's what the book's about. But also, do you remember the magazine Loaded from the 90s?
Yes, I unfortunately,
not a good publication.
Unfortunately, remember it sort of peripherally.
Right, it wasn't a good publication. It was just full of people in bikinis. Like, it was fine, but not an impressive tome.
It was an example of its type. Yes.
Indeed. But they got because they were the sort of most edgy magazine normally, they got a writer of theirs to live for like 2 months living by the dice. It nearly killed him. He had a lot of fun, but he was like, don't do that.
I would abuse that by just being, the dice said don't go into work, go to the pub.
Right, but that's exactly, but that's the thing. But anyway, so there's, because it does get very difficult and very interesting. And the thing is that my parents were like, well, you can't actually do that. And I went, no, but it's not for you. It's for somebody who's 18 and gone to university and wants to be able to free themselves of their upbringing, or do you know what I mean? Just experience new things. Yeah. And I said to my parents, things it's not for you. You know, you've done everything that you want with your life, so you've got responsibilities. And they both looked at each other, looked at me, and went. And I'm like, no, don't tell me. Oh God, what have I done? Can open worms. Oh no,
worms everywhere.
Just.
Do you know what it sounds like to me though? It sounds like a live-action choose-your-own-adventure book.
Right. Absolutely.
And as long as I can sort of look at the page and then
just see what might happen.
Yeah, that's all good for me. I'll share something with you actually. You remind me of a little psychological trick in terms of working out what people want. I don't know if you, like me, have friends who are incredibly bad at choosing what they want to eat in, say, a restaurant scenario, or as is increasingly the case these days, some sort of delivery service. My favorite psychological technique is to say to them, imagine that you're at a table and the waiter's coming over and he's got one of those, silver trays. Exactly so. Yeah. And as he or they or she, whomever they may be, lists it, what is on the plate?
Oh.
And then you go, and it's like, it's steak. Okay, we're having steak, or pancakes. And that genuinely works. It's
I'm sure it does. The problem is that I just tried to do that in my head whilst you were doing it to try and sort of see what I wanted to eat, and all I could think of was one of those sheep's heads, that's been like boiled and that you open up. I'm like, I don't want to eat that. Sheep's brain is not a good.
That is between you and your subconscious, Ed.
It's a very enjoyable subconscious, I think.
It's full of dice and rolls. And speaking of dice and rolls, that was a segue. Queuing it up to roll once more. It spins across the screen. What will it mean? Ooh, it's 10. So the 10 means I ask you this: what do you like in a DM?
Interesting. Massive imagination, obviously. I would say it's sort of. I was going to say it's sort of the role where you can be selfish, but it isn't. When I say that, I don't mean that they can just be selfish. I mean as in that they have so much control that it doesn't matter, as it were, what they do, because provided they do something, you can work off it.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? And so therefore they shouldn't have to take into account their players in order to create what they're creating. If they do, hooray. But what I mean is they shouldn't have to. But also that's not true. Like if you just have a DM who's determined to play their own adventure, that's not going to be fun either. I think it is friendship.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. I think I'd really struggle with being DM'd by somebody who I'd never met in any capacity, because I then wouldn't be. Trust is a strong word. I don't mean as I wouldn't trust them. It's more just I wouldn't have any idea how they dealt with anything. And I think if you're going to have somebody be your DM, I would want more of an introduction than just hey, how you doing? I'll be your DM. I think a attention to detail is good. I've never had it myself. I have heard horrible tales of DMs who are such sticklers for the rules that it gets really boring. But having never had one, I can't really say that they shouldn't be like that.
There's subreddits full of those stories for those who wish to find them.
And an encyclopedic knowledge of the rules, although that's not totally necessary, as in like you don't have to have an encyclopedic knowledge of the rules to be a DM, but it helps.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a tool.
Yeah, interesting.
because I guess if you only have a hammer, it is true what they say, everything starts to look like a nail. You've conjured two thoughts in my mind there, which I think I broadly agree with. When you say that the DM doesn't take into account the individual players, what I interpreted you to mean by that, and obviously tell me if you meant something else, is almost as if the DM is an architect for a playground, right? So you don't think about each individual child, or in some cases drunk adults who might come along and want to use the roundabouts or the swings or whatever, but you trust that there's something there that everyone can enjoy. And much as the people might make a petition and be like, we want a seesaw, please. Then you'd be like, okay, well, a seesaw you shall have. It's gonna. And the other thing that you said was about a DM being a friend, and I understand that you meant that in a direct sense, right. But also I think a DM should be a friend to the players, but that friend who wants you to succeed but always tells you the truth. Right.
Ooh, I don't know if they exist, but no, completely. Well, only because everyone's the hero. Everyone in real life is the hero in their own storyline, unless that's quite serious.
Dr. Horrible taught us that.
Well, indeed. But what I mean is, D&D allows you to take a back seat for a little bit.
Yeah.
And also, it means that you can. Take enjoyment in other people's achievements without it having to mean anything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the opposite of Schadenfreude.
Right,
which
exactly.
I would rely on Chris to provide that word.
Yes, that's whatever it is, but exactly that is exactly that thing. And it's the thing of when someone... Do you remember the computer game Portal?
Yes, yeah.
So there was a similar thing to that because they didn't want to put... I can't remember whether they had it in the first game or the second game, but they didn't want to put a two-player version in because they thought it would just get really annoying. But actually what they found was that when they did put a two-player thing, it was even more fun because it was like, we so nearly got that. Come on, we can do this again. Let's do this. And it suddenly became a really positive thing rather than two people, fighting each other in Mortal Kombat when somebody always had to win. Suddenly it was a thing of like, no, we can beat this thing. And so, what you want is a portal architect.
Yeah.
I suppose. In it.
Yeah. So they're like a puzzle. They're puzzles to be solved by by working collectively. I like that.
Right.
I like that.
And if there's blood and gore along the way, amen.
Oh yeah.
But it doesn't have to be that. That's the That's the crucial bit.
And the blood and gore are obstacles that can be placed within the portal room. I like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So everyone's a designer.
Yes, we'd hope. Exactly. I mean, the thing is that because I said like massive imagination, I think everybody does have massive imagination if you can just tap into it. And a really good DM will be able to do that. But I think demanding that from a DM is a little harsh because that's a quite specialist. I think that's fair. I think that's really good to be able to do that.
Some of the best can definitely do it, but I agree with you. It isn't mandatory in order to be considered a good DM.
Right, exactly. You just have to be good at everything else. Yeah. It is a big skill, is what I mean. Because the thing is, if you can draw a player out, then you're going to keep playing, and that's kind of the most important thing.
Goodness me, I'm thinking about dipping my toes in the water of DMing, probably in a friendly home game.
Best way to
environment first. But it's so much reading to do.
I can't imagine anything worse. I've got to say, it's because a lot of people say, like, as an actor, they always go, "Would you like to direct as well?" I'm like, you must be joking. Give me one thing to do, and I might be okay. Give me everything to do. It'd be awful.
Well, we're very fortunate that you're as good as you are as a player. And I must say, I enjoy both watching and playing with you. It's always a joy.
You're very kind. Likewise.
You always know with you that you're getting something. You're going to get back what you put in, if that makes sense.
No, that's thank you. That's a really big compliment. Thank you very much.
Honestly meant, and I was going to say generously intentioned. How self-aggrandizing was that? I was just looking for like a pithy rhythm, but you understand. Yeah,
I do. I get it. Thank you, sir.
That's all right. So we are rapidly approaching the end of our time together, but we may have time for one or two more.
Cool.
I'm rolling the dice now. Let's see what we end up with. Okay. It's a 4. So this is our intriguing, ideally, twist on the age-old dinner party question. So the question is, who would you love to have at your gaming table, your fantasy gaming table? And I guess for the sake of it, anybody can be living or dead.
Yeah. Who would I like to have? Who? You're okay. You're basically asking me because the thing is that the obvious choices, which I would have for the dinner party, people like Hunter S. Thompson. I think Hunter S. Thompson would be an awful D&D player. Really bad. Look, I'm just going to shoot you. It'd just be
There is no dinner.
That's what I mean. What are you doing to me? I was told I was going to be here for dinner. But yeah, so I would say, I think Jane Austen would be one, I reckon.
Ooh.
Because I think that, as far as I know, she wrote some like ghost stories and stuff like that. Like there was stuff around the edges which she couldn't. She was a woman. She was a woman of that time. She had no experience of what it was she was trying to write about. If you see what I mean. I think if she was brought into D&D, and suddenly she would be like, "Oh my god, entire new worlds! This is incredible!" And then be able to apply the intricacies of human behavior, which she understood almost better than any writer. She would then be able to apply that to D&D, and I think that would be really interesting.
I was sensing a DM, possibly.
Right? Yeah. Exactly. Well, exactly. Yeah. I was gonna. The thing is, I was gonna say with
the appropriate caveats.
No. The thing is, I was gonna say if I was gonna have a DM, it would be H.R. Geiger, the Alien artist.
Wow.
That would be incredible.
Oh wow.
That's what I mean. I think that would be. He would have to be the DM. I think
you'd end up with like a 3D structured map, and
you'd have to actually crawl through your own. Yeah, it would be insane.
The live action D&D experience. I'm here for that.
Exactly.
Nightmare 3.0.
Yes, as designed by H.R. Geiger. But yes, thinking about the other things, because I would want not H.G. Wells. Okay, because I thought a little bit about this. There's a couple of people I definitely have. I think his name's Lucian of Somerset, who's the guy who wrote the very first science fiction story, which was in something like 600 BC, and it was called A True Story. And it's the first one to include alien life forms, interplanetary battle, interstellar travel. Like, it's incredible. And the reason why he's doing it is to prove a point where he's going, no one is going to believe any of the stuff that I've written here. And yet we take seriously in the law courts stuff that people have said about Hercules and, Dionysus and that kind of stuff. Why is this not okay? And why is this okay?
Yeah.
So he was an incredibly intelligent dude, and he had the capacity to go like off planet. So I feel like he would be an amazing player. If you understand what on earth was going on. Somebody would have to speak ancient Greek, I think. Anyway, and there was one other person as well. No, I was going to say, do you know Stanislav Lem?
No, I don't.
He's the guy who wrote Solaris.
Oh, wow.
So he's a sci-fi philosopher.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, like, either you'd have to have him as DM, in which case it would be very boring, or it would be, or he would be a player as well. And I think he would, I think he would be possibly a bit like Tom Black, but potentially less amusing, because I think that he would just create this sort of, what are they called? Warforged clockwork monstrosity, which would then, collapse in a puff of its own philosophy. But yeah. I'm trying to think, is there anybody else? Edgar Allan Poe, that's the other one.
Oh, yes.
That would be pretty cool. And I think you've got 4 then, and at the end, I think
this would be probably some sort of gothic horror xenomorph in space.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
People in the chat, write it if you can. That's what I'd really enjoy.
That is your challenge. You have 30 days to construct this campaign. I'll tell you what, if somebody did write this campaign, I'll play it. I'll play
it. I'd be all over that. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, that's a charity stream waiting to happen right now.
Yeah, exactly. Someone's got the wit. I won't do it because I'm not going to be the DM, I'm afraid. But I'd be eager playing it.
Oh, yes! Sign me up to the front of that queue. Well, we are rapidly approaching time. I'm gonna be cheeky and squeeze in one more question, just because I'm enjoying this far too much not to. So, The dice, it rolleth across the screen. Where will it stop? What will it mean? Well, it's 6, and this is what it means. This means I ask you, how did you start playing TTRPGs, tabletop role-playing games? You kind of touched on this with Dungeons & Dragons before, but was that your first experience of role-playing games?
No. I am a recovering Games Workshop addict. I mean, it was bad.
I feel you.
My teenage years were lost to lead and whatever that paint is made out of. I just...
Lead.
Well, yes. PB, or whatever the side is. Been a long part of my childhood. Basically, I mean, I loved... talking about the Lord of the Rings thing, there was a cartoon that was made in the early 80s, and I think it was put on TV in like 1986 or something like that.
Yeah.
And we had a copy of that on tape, and I watched it until the tape snapped, which was really interesting, because then I went into the Lord of the Rings with a whole load of completely preconceived notions, which then got destroyed. That is the biggest compliment I can pay it, actually. Because in my head now, when I imagine all of the characters from Lord of the Rings, it's from that film, not from the cartoon, which I've seen far, far more times. I must have watched that thousands of times, that cartoon. But actually, Peter Jackson's was so good, it actually overrode it. But having started from just wanting to play... this got brought up recently, and I didn't realize it was weird, but then a couple of other actors were like, that makes quite a lot of sense, but that is weird. Basically, we were having a discussion, and a friend of mine went, didn't you always have that thing when you were younger? Wouldn't it be interesting to just spend a day in somebody else's shoes? And I went, not really. And he went, what, you never had that? And I'm like, no, I kind of did it. Because at the age of 5, I went to my nursery school in a cowboy hat and 2 of those crappy 6-shooter plastic guns.
Yeah.
And the teacher comes out and goes, hello, Edward, you're dressed very strangely today. What's up? And I was like, my name's not Ed, it's Vin. And I spent the entire day pretending to be Steve McQueen's character from The Magnificent Seven.
That's excellent.
It was properly... That's
the alter ego.
That was, and it was also, because Steve McQueen's character, again, not the main character. No. But it definitely felt like it was the... He was a cool one.
It's a philosophical dip into the wonder of the nature of Ed. So I do have to ask. Did you start off on Warhammer or Lord of the Rings Warhammer? Or,
no, definitely Warhammer. I had a 10,000 point Chaos Army. It was.
I was high elf.
I wish we'd had a battle. That would have been.
It would have been excellent. I've still got them all somewhere, so maybe one day we'll bust out the rulebooks. That
would be amazing. I had a Chaos Lord and a Manticore. I was so pleased with that model. It was so cool.
I spent ages on Tyrion and Tethlis, absolutely ages, because it was the actual fiction and the story and the lore is just so. And that reminds me, I should probably play Total War Warhammer at some point.
It's totally
back in. Yeah,
really, really good.
Dip back into that world. Yeah. Well, chat, I know what I'm going to do after this stream. Get myself onto Steam and download. On that epic note of battles and victory and tables and dice, it is time, I am afraid, to come to the end of our time together. It's been an absolute pleasure. Is there anything that you want to plug before we finish up?
Apart from the Warriors of Waterdeep thing, which we have already touched on, at the moment, no. Great shame, but hopefully.
Well, in which case, we shall plug Warriors of Waterdeep twice.
Let's do that.
Why not? Thank you, everyone, for joining us and being part of the show and this epic ramble through tales of Dungeons and Dragons. If you enjoyed us, and even if you didn't come back, we'll happily have you. We stream every Saturday from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. GMT, and we stream D&D games on Mondays and Tuesdays. On Mondays from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m, we stream Gloom Falls on Baldur's Gate, which is rapidly approaching the end game. And on Tuesdays, as you have heard, twice and now once more, we are streaming... What are we streaming, Ed?
Warriors of Waterdeep. Is that right?
Yes, indeed. Was the Anvil of Doomatown.
There we go. Yes.
Yes. And this will be on Tuesdays, as I say, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at GMT. All of our shows stream at twitch.tv/RollTogetherRPG, and there's a YouTube link in chat. And don't forget, you can also enjoy as a podcast. Many thanks again to our D20 Club on Patreon, all our sponsors and supporters. And remember, once more, I've been David Shears. Stay classy at the table. See you next time.